Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Rebecca Ray, aka Ray with Ray's Reads, and I am doing today the Booktube Newbie Tag. That was originally created by Brenda C, but I'm doing the version that was kind of tweaked a little bit by between chapters, and I even tweaked it a little bit more. So it's kind of a combination of all of us, largely inspired by the original creator, Brenda C. So without further ado, question number one. What is your name and age? I've already told you my name, Rebecca Ray, and my age is 27 years old. Question two is, where are you from and where are you now? I am originally from San Diego, California in the United States, but I moved to Germany after I graduated high school. So I've been living here for almost a decade now. And number three, what is my goal with this channel and what am I most excited about? I think my goals and what I'm most excited about are the same exact thing. Definitely most excited about the community. People who like to read as much as I do, people have similar reading goals, people have similar reading styles, genres that they like, you know, definitely building a community of friends. We can encourage each other and give recommendations to each other. That's what I'm also so excited about. I'm so excited to share recommendations with people because I have some 5-star reads that I feel like are not too popular. And I think it's such a shame. It like breaks my heart when I read a book and I think it's 5 stars and then I go on Goodreads and it has like 1,000 reviews or less. Like, I just feel like it deserves so much more. So I want to share some of those books with you guys and I want to help people find new favorite books. And I'm also kind of hoping to find some new favorite books from you guys. I just feel like people have such good recommendations here and they've read so much and the community is so huge that you're sure to find something amazing, your next big read. And so I'm super excited about that. Number 4, what makes you unique in the booktube world? I'm honestly not the biggest fan of this question because I feel like everyone is unique and everyone has a completely different upbringing and background and worldview in general, and so that makes their opinions unique and it makes whatever book they're reading unique to them, how they're taking it in and how they're learning from it or what they're liking, what they're not liking. It depends on each individual person. So I think everyone is unique and I think there's space for everyone to have a booktube. But me specifically, probably what makes me most unique is that I am a multilingual book reader. And so I read in English, which is my native language. I read in German, which I'm fluent in. And I also read in Spanish because I'm trying to be fluent, conversationally fluent in Spanish. I'm right at the intermediate plateau. If you learn languages, you probably know this plateau that I'm talking about. It's a monster. I hate it. I'm trying to overcome this awful plateau by reading a lot in Spanish. And so a lot of books that, well, not a lot. I'm very slow when I read Spanish. So I'm trying to read a lot in Spanish, and honestly I am, but because I'm so slow, if I read 45 minutes in Spanish, that's like the equivalent of me reading 10 minutes in English. So I'm slugging my way through 2 Spanish books right now, and hopefully I'll have them finished by the end of the year. That's my only goal, honestly. But I think that's kind of something that makes me unique, that I have this multilingual background. And the other thing is that I was an American and now I'm living in Germany, and so I'm kind of, you know, multi-culty, so to speak, multicultural, which makes me look at these books with this multilingual, multi-culty lens. Yeah. Number 5, why do you love reading? I feel like this is the most loaded question you could ever possibly ask a reader. I don't know how to answer it without rambling on for like 45 minutes. So I think I'm just gonna say that I love it because you get to experience whatever you want in a book. It's like all these different worlds and all these different imaginary scenarios and plots and characters and everything. And I think it's just so much fun. I think it's just the funnest thing ever. And not only that, but also it's the best way to learn a language. It's so much fun. It's so customizable. It's unique to you, not only from a fun, just general personal hobby point of view, but also from an educational learning point of view. There's nothing better than reading. Number 6, what book or series got you into reading? I don't really think that I have a specific book or series that got me into reading. There was nothing that like pushed me to read more. I have been reading and I've loved reading since the moment that I was able to. It's always been a huge part of my life. And so I don't think that there was a specific series or anything that got me into it. I will say when I was a kid, some of my favorite books to read were, I think they're called the Magic Treehouse series. That was the best. I loved those so much. Can't even remember how many I had, but absolute minimum 30, if not more. And also what I had an absolute minimum of 30, if not more books of was Goosebumps, which was also my favorite series when I was a kid. Those were incredible. I specifically remember, like so vividly, I remembered that creepy book about the puppet. It's like Night of the Living Dummy. And that like was one of my favorites, and I don't know why, because honestly it's so creepy to me. And also the Choose Your Adventures Goosebumps books were so good. That was like peak literature when I was a kid. Like the Choose Your Own Adventures Goosebumps books, like that was so revolutionary. Like it was like the greatest thing to ever come out on paperback. Number 7, what types of books do I read and what types of books will I talk about here on this channel? I read so many different types of books. I'm the biggest fan of fiction, fantasy, and adventure. I love romantasy also. I'm not a big fan of romance on its own, but if you give me romance and fantasy together in the package of romantasy, I am a huge fan. I love epic fantasy. I think that's perhaps my favorite genre, but also it's one I don't read too much because it really requires a lot. I just feel like it's like, you know, I mean, think of Brandon Sanderson, his whole world. That is so many books, and they're big books too, you know? And like I have like up here, wait, no, that's not it. It's over here. These 2 little books, chunk right here, okay? With like typical, like I feel like this is like every single epic fantasy book from like, I don't know, from like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Like this literally could be any epic fantasy book. But I'm a huge fan of this book. As you can see, I've did not crack the spine properly. I've had this for a very long time and I've read it 2 or 3 times, which doesn't sound like that much, but honestly though, it's like almost 900 pages, 836 pages. And this is just the first book in the series, and there are so many books. So I really like epic fantasy, but I feel like it's a lot. You need a lot of time and you need a lot of brain power because you have to learn a whole new magic system usually. You have to learn a whole new world. You have to learn the rules of the world. You have to learn the rules of the magic system. You have to, you know, learn everything, and it feels like you're a baby again. And I kind of love that, but I definitely need to be in a place where I don't have too much work and school and everything going on, where I can set aside a chunk of time to like really take it in and not be stressed about it. And so as much as I love epic fantasy, I feel like I don't read it as much as I used to, but I'm kind of hoping maybe with this channel, I will get back into it a little bit more. I definitely have to continue the series, the Legend of the Seeker series. It's one of my favorites, but I just have not had the motivation. So maybe this is my chance. Also, other books I would talk about here. I'm a huge fan of pirate books and Viking books, fiction specifically. I think nonfiction also is great. It has its time and its place, but I'm a big fan of fiction in general. I definitely prefer fiction to nonfiction on average. That's not to say that's all of the time. I am a huge fan of self-help books, and I'm a Christian, and this is like my whole right here theology section, and so I'm a huge fan of those types of books. But I definitely prefer fiction, and I definitely prefer fantasy adventure kind of books. Number 8, who are some of my favorite authors? Well, Terry Goodkind. I think he's really good. I like him a lot. I also, kind of along the same line, really like Robin Hobb. This is Robin Hobb. typical epic fantasy kind of book. It's, you know, the same kind of pages, the same kind of layout, the same font, the same tiny lettering, you know, it's just very simple, but it's very nice. And so I really like Robin Hobb. The Ship of Magic series I think is really good. I'm starting this again because I got halfway through, or more than halfway, like roughly here. And then I took a break of like, I don't know, a year maybe. And after that point of time, I tried to get back into it at that point in the book, and it was just unreadable. I just couldn't grasp what was happening. I couldn't grasp what was going on. It was too much. And so I started back at the beginning, and honestly, that was also probably a year ago. So I'm gonna have to start a third time, probably from the beginning, and try again. And I'm really hoping with this YouTube channel, I will finally finish it. But I love Robin Hobb. I love Terry Goodkind. I also really love Outlander series. I love this also. You can see this also is a well-used book. And again, I just feel like they all look the same from the inside. But I really like her, Diana Gabaldon. I am so sorry. After this video, I'm gonna look up how to pronounce her name. Gabaldon. Diana Gabaldon. Is that it? Gabaldon. I don't know. Anyways, I'm sorry. Every time I'm like slamming these books down really hard, and every time it does, it like shakes the table that the camera's on. How could I possibly forget one of my favorite authors of all time? I'm so sorry. T. Kingfisher, aka Ursula something. That's like her actual name that she uses to write kids' books. But T. Kingfisher is the name that she uses to write young adult novels and general adult novels, and I'm so obsessed with her. She's so good. She's possibly my #1 favorite author of all time. I just love her so much. Also, this book smells so good. Oh, it's like crack. It just like is my favorite thing ever. But I love T. Kingfisher. I think she writes the most amazing like fairy tale inspired kind of books, but like dark fairy tales, and she writes middle-aged characters all the time, which I really like. I just think it's kind of refreshing to read about like a 40-year-old woman as the main character compared to like a 17-year-old child. And I think that she writes the characters so well, and I just really like her style. I think she's so good. Next question. Number 9, what is the last book I read? I just finished The Tarnished Empire from Danielle L. Jensen, and that is kind of the prequel, although it was released as like the 3rd book, I think, but it's the prequel. By the way, just a side note, I hate it when authors do that. I really like Danielle Jensen, but I hate it so much when there's a book that's a prequel technically, and then they release it after they've already released the other books. Like, I understand why they would do it like this, but just because I understand doesn't mean that I like it. I just hate it so much. I don't know. I'm happy that I got into the series after these books had already come out. I've just started reading the series now, and so I had the opportunity then to read The Tarnished Empire first, and now I'm doing a tandem read of The Dark Skies and The Dark Shores together. She has like a tandem chart on her website. I will link it in the description box below just in case anyone is interested. But I'm doing that right now, and The Tarnished Empire is the prequel for Marcus, who is a character in one of them. That's the drawback of reading the books together. I cannot tell you a single thing specific to Dark Skies versus Dark Shores. To me, in my mind, it's one book. I don't know what the two main characters of The Dark Skies are versus The Dark Shores. It's all the same to me. So yeah, that was what I just finished most recently. And number 10 is what are you currently reading? As I explained, Dark Skies, Dark Shores, the tandem read. Also, on top of that, I am reading a lot. I don't know if anyone else is reading as many books as I am, but please let me know in the comments below how many books you're reading right now, and please let me know if you've beaten me out for max number of books. I typically read at least 1 or 2 books per language, and as I mentioned before, I read in 3 languages. So that's usually an absolute minimum of 6 books, which I know sounds kind of crazy, but that's also another reason why I don't read epic fantasy as much anymore, because I feel like with epic fantasy, you kind of have to focus on that. And I really like jumping around. And so in Spanish, I'm reading Harry Potter in Spanish, the first book. And I'm also reading Through My Window. In German, I'm reading, I don't know what it is in English. It's like the Time Traveler series from Kirsten Gear. I read the first book and the second book, and now I'm on the third book, which is the final book. Yeah, so I'm reading that in German, and then also I'm reading the Vampire Academy series, and it's book number 4, I think. And I'm just going through that whole series in German also because I read it when I was younger, and I think it's a decent series. So I'm reading that in German. And then in English, I'm reading Dark Skies and Dark Shores, and I'm also reading Starter Villain. And I can't remember who the author is. I will put up pics for all these books. You've already seen them by now, but just to let you know, don't worry. You can see Dark Skies was the most recent thing that I was reading. Number 11, what do you use for bookmarks? I read a lot on my Kindle, so I don't use any bookmarks. In general though, let me see. In Ship of Magic here, I just have an actual bookmark. Actually, that's shocking. I usually never use actual bookmarks. This is from the Munich Readery, which is an English used bookstore in Munich that I visited once on a trip. And that's what I'm using. Sorry, I have cats and they just knocked over an empty water bottle. And then in the Terry Goodkind novel, I finished it, but in the beginning was my bookmark that I was using, and it's Monteverde Brewing Company in Costa Rica. I went there on my honeymoon. We just got 2 little coasters, and since they're out of paper and I wanted to keep it as a souvenir, I don't actually use them as coasters, but I use them as bookmarks. So most of the time I just use anything that's lying around. If it's a scrap of paper, if it's a candy wrapper, if it's, you know, I've used an empty seed packet as a bookmark before. I use anything I can get my hands on. Number 12, show us your current TBR pile. I am actually going to skip this question because I don't have a TBR pile. I have just a list on Goodreads. I will attach a screenshot of how many books I have. I mean, I can't even begin to go through that right now because it's hundreds upon hundreds. It's way too many. I will skip to question number 13. And this is a what would you choose? Hardcover or paperback, ebooks or physical books, and owning or borrowing books. I would pick, well, okay, purely for aesthetic reasons, like if I had the space and the money, I would pick hardcover. But because I don't, and because I tend to have not that much space, this is my only bookshelf, which is so teeny tiny. And so because I don't have that much space, because I also don't have that much money, and because I also get so stressed when I have hardcover books, I feel like I have to protect them so much. And I feel like I can't even read them because I don't want to damage them. And I know that that's kind of backwards because it's hardcover, so it's sturdier than a paperback, you know? But it's just because they're usually so beautiful, and they're so much more expensive usually, especially like if you get like a fancy hardcover, like limited edition or something, which are the most beautiful ones and the ones that I gravitate towards. I just feel like it stresses me out too much, and I know that's just a me thing and I could just stop thinking that way, but if only it were that easy. So I will pick paperback, but I love hardcover. And then ebooks or physical books, I lean towards ebooks. I love my Kindle. I think it's so useful. Because I read so many books at once, it's so impractical to take a bag with like 12 books on my commute, you know, into the city, but it's so practical to just have my Kindle. And my Kindle has everything on it, and it's so easy, and it's so useful and it's tiny and I just love it so much. The battery life is ridiculous. Like I could literally read for like a week straight. I cannot express my love for my Kindle enough. Like also for language learning, it has like built-in dictionaries. It has built-in translation services if you're connected to Wi-Fi. Like it's just such an amazing invention. I love it so much. And the last what would you choose is owning or borrowing books. And in general, I'm gonna say borrowing, just because really the only books that I own are, because I have a lack of space, as we talked about, are books that I love. And so I'm not gonna buy a book anymore at this point in my life unless I've read it and I know that I love it and I know that I would reread it in the future. Then I will buy it in paperback usually. And so I'm kind of just really hardcore into Libby right now and borrowing books in general instead of purchasing any books. I also just feel like, I don't know. I feel like I used to purchase so many books in the past and it was kind of just like to have a huge selection of books and not necessarily because I actually genuinely wanted it or because it brought me joy. And so I feel like I kind of have to, like relax a little bit and chill a little bit. Like not only with books, but like with clothing also and everything. Like I'm trying to be a little bit more minimalistic in that regard, at least, not in anything else, but at least like in the purchasing regard, like I'm trying to purchase as little as possible and, you know, just purchase things that really genuinely bring me a lot of joy. And that is only books that I've already read that I know that I love, like 5-star reads. And the last question, what challenges do you think you will face with this channel? I think that the biggest challenge is just going to be posting consistently. I work 2 jobs. One of them is I own my own business, a website for learning languages and an Etsy shop. And so I usually have quite a bit to do with that. And then with the job that I work, it's for a hair color company, like fantasy shades, like pink and purple and everything. And I love both of those jobs. I love owning my own business and I love working for such a fun hair color company. I think it's tons of fun, but it takes up a lot of time. And on top of it, I'm a university student. I'm really hoping that once I'm finally finished with my bachelor's degree, which hopefully is going to be within a year maximum, then I think things will be much easier. And so I'm just jumping in feet first right now with this channel and we're just gonna see what happens. Yeah, I think it will be fine. Mostly I'm just excited for this channel. So yeah, thank you for hanging out for this whole time. I will see you in the next video. Bye.